Sri Lanka remains on the edge after the president fled the country. Angry protesters have stormed the streets of Colombo once again. In the latest, demonstrators gathered near the speaker's residence, which is close to the Lankan parliament. Police fired tear gas and used water cannons to disperse the protesters. The acting president, Ranil Wickremesinghe, has given orders to the security forces to protect the parliament and has imposed a nationwide curfew till 5 a.m. on Thursday. Earlier, protesters stormed the Prime Minister's office, calling for his resignation. The defence chief has called for calm, urging the public to cooperate to maintain law and order. Our correspondent, Dasuni Athauda, has been reporting from Ground Zero through the day. She tells us how the day unfolded in the country. Take a look.
In Sri Lanka, it was another day of chaos. It started at late night when President Rajapaksa fled the country. The 73-year-old, his wife and two bodyguards took a military aircraft. His destination was the neighboring nation of Maldives. Reports suggest Gotabaya was taken to a resort after landing in Malé. Why Maldives? Rajapaksa is said to be close to former President and Speaker Mohamed Nasheed. In fact, when Nasheed was ousted out of power in 2012, he sought refuge in Sri Lanka. So Malé may be returning the favor right now.
Now the protesters are just refusing to leave, while a faction of the protesters are requesting these citizens to go to Gotabaya village, which is the main protest site here in Colombo.
So with Gotabaya gone, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe is now the acting president. A move that angered the protesters even more. They descended on the streets of Sri Lanka once again.
The Prime Minister has no right to become the President because he lost his election. He entered Parliament from the national list. Therefore, we believe he has no right to do this. He must honour the people's wishes and resign immediately.
A state of emergency was announced in the island nation. But even that did not deter the protesters. They defied tear gas and water cannons to storm the Prime Minister's office.
Steady inflow of tear gas that is being fired. The protesters are continuing to move away from the office of the Prime Minister, which is now the epicenter of tensions here in Sri Lanka.
Once they were inside, there were scenes of jubilation. Protesters were cheering. They were happy. Some even held a Sri Lanka flag aloft from one of the balconies of the building.
The Prime Minister's office was completely infiltrated by the protesters who arrived at the official place and the office of the Prime Minister.
Wickremesinghe has since ordered the army to do whatever is necessary to restore order. He called on the protesters to leave, but they remain adamant. They want the President and Prime Minister to resign before they leave.
In 2 consecutive days, the President of this country confirmed that he is going to resign, but up until now, we have no confirmation of his resignation. The Speaker has mentioned on a few occasions that he is going to resign. We still don't have any official confirmation.
Sri Lanka's Speaker says Gotabaya will make arrangements to send his resignation letter by today. As President, Rajapaksa enjoys immunity from arrest. So clearly, he wanted to go abroad before stepping down. This is to avoid any possibility of being detained or arrested. Media reports from Maldives suggest that he is heading for Singapore next.
President Gotabaya Rajapaksa was seen fleeing the country from Sri Lanka to the Maldives. After that, this afternoon, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe was confirmed to be the acting president of Sri Lanka. That resulted in protesters storming and infiltrating the Prime Minister's office here in Colombo. Party leaders have decided to request for Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe to resign as well in tandem with the resignation of President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, which we are yet to receive here in Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka's political crisis is worsening just as much as its economic crisis, and we will be bringing you the updates as and when it happens here in Sri Lanka. Reporting from near the Presidential Secretariat, I'm Dasuni Athauda.
Dasuni Athauda is now live on the broadcast with us. Has been tracking all those developments in Colombo. Dasuni, the protesters there also taking to the streets and gathering near the Speaker's residence, which is close to the Parliament. Take us through the latest coming in at this point.
Yes, Molly. Just a few hours ago, tensions did erupt near the Speaker's office, which is in close proximity to the Parliament premises. Now, some believe that the protesters who went there were protesters who were right outside the Presidential Secretariat as well as the Prime Minister's office. But in your latest is the fact that an island-wide curfew has now been put in place by the acting president, who is the current Prime Minister, Ranil Wickremesinghe. But just right behind me, if you could see, I don't think any of the protesters are really sort of heeding to these orders, given that the main protest site, the Gotago village, which is right outside the Presidential Secretariat, is full of life at this given point as well. And there seems to be no security or army involvement to try to sort of quell these protesters from leaving this site as well. So although there is an island-wide curfew that has now come into effect until 5 a.m. tomorrow, the situation right outside the Presidential Secretariat does not seem to be of one where there is a curfew.
Right. Take us through the reactions coming in and the statement coming in from Ranil Wickremesinghe. The protesters earlier also stormed the Prime Minister's office. And now as the acting president, Wickremesinghe has appealed for calm. If you can give us a better sense of how the protesters have been reacting to that statement as well.
Well, throughout the day today, the second that Sri Lanka got to know that Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe will be stepping up to the role of acting president, that's when the tensions flared right outside the office of the Prime Minister. That is because the citizens at large, by and large, felt that it was necessary for the Prime Minister to also step down along with the president. Now, keep in mind, today is the 13th of July, the day that the entire nation was waiting for an official letter of resignation to be put forward by President Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Sri Lankan time right now is 10:15, so we have about another 1.5, closer to 2 hours to wait for this letter to arrive. So much of the focus right now is as to whether President Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be sending in the much-awaited letter. And if you do go speak to these protesters, their general sense of understanding is that they want President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to go home, but that simply is not enough for them. They also want the Prime Minister to go home as well.
We're leaving it there for the moment. Dasuni Athauda getting us the very latest from Colombo. Thanks very much for joining us on the broadcast. WION now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.